All right, let's jump right in. Today we're going to talk about something that might sound a little strange at first. Why having a brilliant, world-changing invention? Well, why that's just not enough. You know the story. We're all taught to celebrate these heroic innovators, right? The lone genius in a lab, that big eureka moment. I mean, we build these huge stories around people like James Watt with the steam engine, or Steve Jobs giving us the smartphone. But what if that's only half the picture? Seriously, what if the invention is just the starting gun, but the race itself is won by something completely different? So, is a great idea on its own really enough to change society? Well, history has a pretty clear answer, and it's probably not what you think. And to really get why, we need to look back. So let's start with a fascinating story, a kind of cautionary tale you might call history's advanced failure. Okay, so picture this. We're in the early 1400s. This is way before Columbus. China has this admiral, Zheng He, and he's leading these massive expeditions with technology that was just leagues ahead of anything else on the planet. I mean, we're talking nearly 100 years before Columbus even set sail. And get this, 400 years later, 400, Admiral Nelson's famous flagship, the HMS Victory, was still smaller than the biggest ships in Zheng He's fleet. Just incredible. And when you look at the numbers, the gap is just staggering. I mean, this wasn't even close. Zheng He's fleet had something like 300 ships, with a crew of 28,000 people. Columbus? He had 3 little ships and 90 guys. The biggest Chinese treasure ships were absolute giants, making the Santa Maria look like a toy boat. Technologically, there was just no comparison. China was in a completely different league. So you'd think China would go on to rule the seas, right? But that's not what happened. The expeditions were stopped, the whole project was shut down, and this amazing technology was basically just put away to collect dust. Meanwhile, Europe, with its tiny, kind of backwards ships, just kept plugging away. They kept exploring, kept trading, and eventually came to dominate global trade. And this is the perfect example of our whole point today. The best tech didn't win. The tech that got used, that's what won. Okay, so if having the most advanced invention isn't the secret sauce, then what is? How does progress really happen? Well, that leads us right into our next section. When you think industrial revolution, you probably think of a highlight reel of inventions, right? The steam engine, the spinning jenny, boom, boom, boom. But the truth is, the revolution wasn't just about invention. It was a learning revolution. The real game changer was this obsessive focus on seeing how other people were doing things and then bringing that knowledge home to use it and make it better. And the countries that really took off, they had a playbook, a kind of formula for success. It wasn't about sitting around waiting for a stroke of genius. Nope, it was a really active process. Step 1, go study what your competitors are doing. Step 2, document everything, write it all down. Step 3, bring it all home and figure out how to make it work for you. And maybe the most critical step of all, step 4, share that knowledge far and wide. Don't let it get stuck in one place. And we're not talking about a few curious tourists here. This was a serious, organized effort. You had government officials and top engineers going on these learning tours. They'd fill up entire travel diaries with notes and sketches of foreign machines. And then you had these huge projects, like the first encyclopedias, which were created specifically to spread all this technical know-how. They were basically creating open-source instruction manuals for building a modern economy. So that's the history. But what about today? Well, this exact same idea, this gap between having an invention and actually putting it to use, is still a huge deal. And that brings us to what we can call the modern enterprise gap. So what is the enterprise gap? It's pretty simple, really. It's the gap in the number and size of companies in a country that are actually capable of taking a new technology and running with it. The key thing to understand here is that the problem isn't a shortage of ideas. It's a shortage of doers, of organizations that can turn those ideas into reality. I mean, just think about it. What does a company actually do? They're the ones who buy the fancy new machines. They license the patents. They scale up production, build the supply chains, and train workers how to use the new stuff. They are the engines that make technology useful. Without them, even the greatest invention in the world is just a cool drawing on a piece of paper. And this really gets to the heart of the challenge for a lot of countries today. Here's a thought experiment for you. Imagine we made every single patent in the world totally free overnight. Would that solve everything? Probably not. Because if you don't have enough companies on the ground with the skill and the scale to actually use that knowledge, then nothing really changes. The tech is available, sure, but it's still out of reach. Okay, so let's pull all these threads together. Let's talk about how we go from that first spark of an idea to making a real, lasting impact on the world. It really boils down to two different but equally important concepts. Think of it like two sides of a coin. On one side, you've got innovation. That's the eureka moment. It's the inventor, the new idea. Super exciting, totally essential. But then you flip the coin over and you've got utilization. This is the messy, real-world work of getting that idea into everyone's hands. It's the companies, the factories, the daily grind. And that is the side that actually changes the world. So if you remember just one thing from all of this, let it be this quote: "Innovation is necessary but insufficient." That's it. That's the whole story. The breakthrough idea is just the start. The real magic happens when that idea gets used by lots of people in lots of places. And so that leaves us with a really big question to chew on. If progress is really about using technology, not just creating it, well, shouldn't that change how we approach everything? From the way we think about global development to how we invest in our own economies. What does it look like to focus not just on creating the next great invention, but on building up the ability for everyone to use it? Now that is something worth thinking about.